In our very first episode of the Partners podcast, we will be talking with recently appointed CEO Brian Miller about the state of the stop-loss industry, the state of Partners MGU, and how his leadership style drives our company and its culture. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, those of you in stop loss land and everywhere for joining our PMGU podcast. With us today is our CEO, newly appointed CEO, I guess for about 6 months or so, Brian Miller. I can't think of a better first guest to have than to have you on here because, like I said, you and I, we've known each other for the last 4 years. We talked about a lot of different things. I've got some questions lined up, some things I don't think we've ever talked about before, so I'm really curious as to what your reaction might be to some of those. Most folks from in the role that you're in usually come from either an actuarial background or sales background or an underwriting background. So I'm kind of curious, has your experience, how the experiences that you've had has prepared you for the role you have now as CEO of Partners?
No, it's a interesting question, and I find myself just eternally underprepared when I wake up in the morning, and then I have a couple of cups of coffee, a couple of great conversations, and feel a little bit better about it by noon each day. This is such an interesting world. We have a variety of problems that have been around for 40 years and are inherent in stop loss, and so much of what we're facing is new and changes daily as you bring in economics and politics and governance, areas of business leadership, and how employee benefits are related to the attraction and retention of great talent. And so our industry, insurance as a whole is often seen as fairly static, and it would be almost impossible to think about being prepared for this position from that perspective. And the more that I've gotten to know the industry, the people in it, and understanding some of the dynamics, you do realize how transitional and modernized our industry is. And it really does require more of a nimble approach. And I think that's the root of why I was afforded the opportunity to move into the chief executive role. And definitely what I espouse in terms of leadership is that ability to consistently build, measure, and learn. What we do every day is identify our processes, look for ways to improve them internally and externally, measure the results, apply that learning, and start building again so that we're in a constant evolution towards a more perfect version of ourselves as a company. And I think that's where my background comes in. Like you said, I do have an academic background, a master's in supply chain, definitely as a student in different areas. And then the unique perspective of having the opportunity to teach as well at the university level and taking graduating seniors through kind of their final project before going out into the world. You find that a lot of those lessons in idea creation, in research, in analytics, all become incredibly relevant to the ongoing maintenance of a great company. And specifically because we've been incredibly fortunate to acquire great talent along the way. That doesn't require management; it requires support. So it's really created a unique role for me to be able to fill on the chief side that might be a little bit different than what a lot of companies have needed from their chief executives.
I could do this on a macro and a micro scale, but what do you see the biggest challenge within our industry right now, especially either within our company and I guess outside of our company? What do you see as the biggest challenge right now?
Sure. No, it's an incredibly important question for us to all really entertain and hopefully achieve some kind of consensus on. Biggest issue overall, and it comes up every single day in the literature, is the escalating price and cost of healthcare. Obviously, that's something that drives all of us or each of us every day, and how we can find a way to maintain it. As an MGU, as a stop loss partner, there's a kind of a little bit more finite scope from which we can approach that problem and the solution that we represent. So to me, in looking at it, I see the commoditization of stop loss as a problem within the overall cost structure of healthcare. Stop loss on the carrier side, on the MGU side, it's seen as completely transitional, and that you can move from any one carrier to another. And I think that we've lost sight of an accountability process that can exist in what we offer in stop loss, what MGUs and carriers do, that can add an element of cost control to those escalating costs. So my hope is that as we continue to evolve as an industry, we identify the role that each of the key players, from the group through the TPA, through the stop loss MGU, broker partners, where each of us can affect those costs, and that we can hear the stories of one another, so that we can hopefully, in an additive fashion, continue to do business together, strengthen those relationships, but still bring those incremental savings to the board that allow us to continue to offer these services with a high level of I'm going to duplicate words here, but with a high level of service associated with the product that we offer.
Yeah, I think the whole concept of value tends to get lost in that whole equation of the commoditization of stop loss, because most of the time people are always, just like you said, just looking for that bottom line number, and they're not looking for the other stuff that comes along with it. We pride ourselves on the foundation of the business model that's been created, the build, sell, share, manage model. We're about 4.5 years into it. Mm-hmm. And I know a question that's on the minds of a lot of our producers that we work with, the people, at least in my region, and people I'm sure in other parts of the country that we work with, is they're like, hey, where does Partners stand as it relates to the process?
Where we are right now is interesting. We had amazing growth, just like we planned, through the first 3.5 years. We got over that $100 million mark. We built the best team in the country on a customer service and fulfillment side, sales, claims, underwriting, and all of the backroom support with finance, clinical risk, and med review. So we've achieved all of our goals there. What you can't really see happening, I guess, at any point in time, are things like escalating medical costs, where almost every carrier posted losses last year in what was our third tree year, I guess. A pandemic setting in. Right. And when you're looking to create the maximum value of a company, you really you got to time it right. You want to make sure that you have appetite in the marketplace for a purchase. So our goal, while at a simplified version, was always to reach a certain premium and then sell. The real goal, and what everybody understands, is that we wanted to achieve a value for our company. And the premium might vary a little bit as it relates to underwriting profit, as it relates to the multiple in the purchasing side. So you've got 3 different variables that need to align at some level of synergy in order to maximize that value. And a growing MGU and locking in our processes, that's taken care of. Check. Growing an underwriting profit, absolutely. We've got that where we need it to be. And then you invite COVID, and you change appetites, and we need that third variable to come into some level of perspective and planability, some static balance there, where we can see carriers in the marketplace that have appetite for a purchase like ours, an acquisition. We've got a lot of interest from private equity. You see a lot of consolidation. It happens every week. It seems like there's another acquisition reported through private equity. The goal is to have all of these types of parties with a maximum appetite and availability of cash at the table at the same time. And I think that's probably been where this last year has been. You know what, guys? We need to keep focusing on growth and underwriting profit while we wait for all the appetites to normalize as COVID perspective and that comes back into play. So long answer. We're right on track as far as I'm concerned. We're right exactly where we need to be, just waiting for that moment when all 3 of those variables intersect and the max value is within our reach.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say too, I mean, especially to your point, bringing up COVID, everyone's talked about the whole concept of deferred utilization, I think, you've got a lot of folks out there in the marketplace being maybe a tad more aggressive than need be.
Mhm.
I think the thing I like about what we're trying to do, at least, is that we've got all the tools in place. We've got everything poised. And so, we've had our ebbs and flows, but at the end of the day, when, we're in a great position to, one, maximize on whatever opportunities may exist from an underwriting perspective. But secondly, like you said, when all those stars align, we'll be poised to make that next step and, and sell or do whatever is going to make the most sense for the company and for our producers.
Absolutely. It's just something that you and I talk about all the time is we have to focus on the process, not the results.
Yep.
Perfect process will yield the right results. And the introduction of COVID and the change in the marketplace, it gives us a little bit of time and space to really make certain that we're as tight as possible on our processes, both in building relationships and in servicing them and in taking care of our people in-house and making certain that we've got internal and external operations exactly where they need to be.
So if you could point to one thing that you're most proud of so far since you've been CEO, I know it's been a short time, and I'm not asking you to name names or anything like that, but what would you say is probably the one thing you're most proud of so far since becoming CEO? And it could be anything, it doesn't matter.
Sure. Where I love what we've done and where we've gotten accolades from the folks that have seen it as carrier partners and intermediaries, actuaries, the people that know in the industry, is our analytics. What we've developed in-house is unparalleled in the industry. It allows us to make good data-driven decisions where we can still rely on this incredible team that we've built and the 20 to 30 years of experience across our executive underwriters, or for each of our executive underwriters and sales VPs. But those decisions and the opportunities are vetted and supported so that we can prove how good they are with the analytics on the background. And it's given us an ability to help our producer partners really understand the nature of risk and how we perceive it and where we can not necessarily maximize profitability. That's not the goal. Reasonable profits are the goal, but where we can really trend in a direction of transparency in terms of how we value risk and partnership and helping to equate that to value, really through the service side and the maintenance or stabilization of pricing over time. But really feel like what we've done on the analytics side is driving kind of a new page in the industry, and I think it'll be of incredible value in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like that's really what you're looking at to be sort of the next iteration of what Partners is going to look like to our producers.
Absolutely. We don't want to take away the gut instinct of a great underwriter, and obviously the relationship and trust that comes with a good sales relationship and the maintenance of it, but really being able to help everybody understand, to lift that proverbial veil so that folks can understand the inner workings. And it's not just this black box behind the scenes that we call underwriting, and includes things like trend and leverage trend and manual, but what that means and how a block builds some level of resilience to some of those moving pieces, which in turn creates a consistency and predictability for the group, which should be paramount in a value measure.
Let's talk about leadership for a minute. Now, I personally, like I said, having known you for the time I have, would describe you as probably more of I describe you as a servant leader, obviously focusing on the well-being of others over yourself. But I'm kind of curious as to how you view your leadership style and how you use it to develop people.
Sure. High expectations, deep devotion. Just that simple phrase would be what I think is needed when you're building and maintaining a team. There is nothing I wouldn't do for our people, obviously, and I want them to feel. I'm so glad that you see me that way, because that is definitely a goal. But I would also challenge you, and I think you would agree, that while I am here to support you, I would also hope that you recognize that no one has ever had higher expectations of you than I do. And it's an exchange for that devotion.
Sure.
That devotion is not just benevolence. It's achieving a goal,
Right.
and I don't hide that. My hope and the best bosses I've had in my life and mentors have demanded excellence from me while also making certain that they were available to help me achieve it. They let me get bumped and bruised and scraped and fall down. They didn't necessarily help me get back up, but they always gave me another book to read or a for instance in their life or an introduction, something that helped to facilitate the success that could come from that kind of effort. And it goes back to that simple phrase that we talked about earlier: reward or focus on the effort, not the outcome.
Right.
That is just kind of a guiding principle overall. I'm a coach and a teacher at heart. I've got 23 seasons, I think, now as a youth soccer coach, and I find the challenges and lessons that I see from my 13-year-old girls team as being incredibly relevant. And I learn from them every day and bring those exercises into the business world and vice versa.
I heard a quote one time, actually in my own MBA studies, and the quote basically said, you don't grow without changing, and you don't change without growing in some way. So how do you feel, again, in this short time, how do you feel you've changed and how do you feel you've grown?
The growth that I've had is really been based on that idea of just having exposure to an incredible group of people that have more than opened up their processes, their historical, their backgrounds, the successes they've achieved in the past. As we've analyzed and looked at failure and success together, again, people that have been open to new thoughts and ideas. And it's allowed me to inject what I am good at or where I come from, which is systems analysis, and to get to take part in these conversations that maybe I shouldn't have to begin with, because I was the junior in terms of knowledge, stop loss knowledge specifically. As I transition that role into the CEO role, something that's it's funny, no matter how much you're prepared for it at the beginning of a conversation or at the end of a conversation, it's different when you realize that, okay, I've got to say yes or no to this and live with the results. And I've always taken accountability. And in the other companies that I've had, I've been that chief officer. Through the first 4 years, Mark has always been there in the background as a mentor, and he still is, absolutely, every day. But there's a different expectation in terms of my ownership of those decisions. And it's challenged me to, what I hope is in a good way, to really challenge the folks on our team that much more. Put me in a position to believe in you, and I will, is kind of how I approach those conversations. And thankfully, we've got good relationships that allow us to box, be a little bit pugilistic along the way, so that we come to an outcome that is beneficial and agreed upon. And so the long answer to your question again, but the growth has really come from a next level of relationship with our people.
No, I mean, to your point, sometimes you got to get, conflict is good. If it's done constructively, it's always beneficial. Yep. So, no, man, it's been awesome working with you. I tell you, I've learned more from you in the last 4 years than I can probably say I've learned from people in the last 25, 30 years of being in the insurance business. So I've appreciated your mentorship and your friendship, especially during the time. So absolutely. No, awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I think this has been a very enlightening discussion. I've learned some things about you I didn't know. And I'm sure we've talked about the status of the stop loss industry, and I think a lot of our producer partners will be very pleased with the responses they've gotten with regard to where we're at in the process. So thanks again for your time. Thanks everyone for joining the Partners podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Vince, one last thing from me too. I just want to mention how much I love the idea of this type of an interface. And as we grow our list of invitees, I really encourage folks, competitors, vendors, other marketplace presenters. We'd love to have this become a really diverse, inclusive conversation that touches on the personalities and the problems in the industry. So really appreciate you guys putting the time into this, JT on the production side, and really look forward to what comes of it over the next year.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thank you.